Hello, everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One. The Fox Television Network has already renewed the hit TV show The Gifted for a second season. That first-year show did well for the network on Monday nights. Hayley Lovitt stars as Sage on that hit TV show. She's a UNC Wilmington graduate who worked for several years behind the scenes trying to land this kind of an opportunity. I interviewed Hayley by Skype from her apartment in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, actually on the night that the 2-hour season finale of The Gifted was going to air. We talked about that role, some of her previous appearances on television and in movies, and what brought her to North Carolina and to UNC Wilmington.
I lived in Oklahoma when I was younger, and then we lived in Morganton through like my high school years, and then went to Wilmington after that.
What took you from, you were born, I guess, in the Tulsa area. What took you to Morganton, wasn't it?
My dad's job. He's a preacher, and I don't know, he just got a new job there, so.
Did you like that area?
It's nice. I kind of miss all parts of North Carolina. The mountain, we lived in Asheville for a while, and then Morganton. The mountains and the beach. North Carolina is such a pretty state.
What was Hayley like as a young lady? I tried to do a little bit of research on it. I understand you liked acting and you liked performing even as a child, but what were you like? What did you want to do?
I always wanted to be an actor, like since I was a little kid. And then when I got into like middle school and high school, I got more into theater and started getting really serious about it. And I did theater in high school, and I also did a group called Forensics, National Forensics League, which is speech and debate. And it took me a while to join because that sounded really nerdy, and I was like, I'm not joining a speech and debate club. But then I like watched some of my friends do it and realized it was pretty cool. And I did an event called Dramatic Interpretation, and just did the one semester, my last semester of high school, and won the state championship with that event.
Wow, that's rocket right to the top as far as performance is concerned.
Yeah.
Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? I guess you graduated from Freedom High School, and then you came to UNC Wilmington. What drew you to UNCW for your education?
To be honest, by the time I was going to go to college, I was just going to give up acting and not do it anymore because I had been talking to people about it through my high school years, my middle school years, and decided that like it was not a viable career option for me, just because so many people want to do it, and even like if you have a little success, it doesn't mean that you're going to have like some long-standing career in it. So I thought, I want to go with stability and do something that is kind of related but more stable. So I was looking for colleges with good communications programs, and there's a communication studies program at UNCW. And it's a really great program, and it was great professors, great department, great classes. And so that was like kind of what drew me initially to UNCW. And then whenever I went and visited and saw Wilmington and Wrightsville Beach, I was like, all right, that's where I'm going to go for sure.
Yeah, that usually does a pretty good job of drawing people here, especially that are not from the beach. When you take that 10-minute drive from campus down Eastwood Road to Wrightsville Beach, that usually does a pretty good sales job.
Exactly.
Did you have a thought about what you wanted to do? I mean, was it radio, television? I mean, communications is a wide scope, and but I mean, what were your thoughts there?
So initially, whenever I went into college, from high school, I thought that I would get into news broadcasting, reporting, anchoring, that kind of thing was kind of my thought. And then I started taking classes, and that kind of evolved into public relations. And I also had a really awesome negotiations class that I started thinking maybe I'll do that. And then I don't know, I think because I always wanted to act, even though I was interested in a lot of different things, nothing really felt fully satisfying to me. So I was gonna go to law school after UNCW, and I got a job at a law firm, and I didn't like it very much. It was a lot more just paperwork and, mundane stuff than
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't as exciting as I had anticipated. So I just left that job and got an agent and started acting, and it's been an uphill battle, but it's been fun and rewarding.
Was there one specific incident that said, "I'm going to give this a shot"? One day you walked in and just didn't like it anymore? Because people usually are driven, and then something sends them onto that path. What was it for you?
I think just realizing like how unsatisfied I was in doing any other job. Like I was young, I had only been out of college for, yeah, a couple months maybe, and I just thought, this is when I should be trying this. And I lived in Wilmington for about a year, when I first started acting, and then I moved to Charlotte because I had a friend who was doing crew work,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to work at a restaurant and act anymore. I wanted to do something else. So I started doing crew work. So I was working behind the scenes and doing acting. So I was just like film TV commercials full time, uh, at that point, which was in like 2010.
But there were a couple of you were on what, One Tree Hill and Sleepy Hollow, both which shot here in Wilmington. Was that before, or was that about the time that you were starting to make that transition?
I actually didn't book One Tree Hill until I moved to Charlotte. I'm not sure what year I did that, but what year I did One Tree Hill. I moved to Charlotte in 2010, so it was after that. I think it was the last season.
Hmm.
Um, and then Sleepy Hollow, whenever North Carolina lost the film incentives, that's when I moved to Atlanta. And Sleepy Hollow actually moved to Atlanta too, and that's when I did that show.
Okay, so you actually shot there. Did you know? A lot of people say that that was a big mistake that North Carolina lost that film incentive, specifically for Wilmington because of, Iron Man 3 here and so many other things. At the time, did you know about that? Did it cross your plate that this was something that really could have sparked your career in North Carolina? You wouldn't have had to move.
Absolutely. I miss North Carolina immensely. Like, uh, I knew as soon as we lost the film incentive, the work was just going to start bleeding out of the state. There just wasn't enough money for shows to be there. I immediately, that month, we lost, January 2015 was when they sunset or whatever, and
Right.
that's when I moved to Atlanta, like 2 weeks later. And I mean, I feel terrible for North Carolina. It was a great place to live, and I know a lot of people that were locals to North Carolina and Wilmington and Charlotte who film was their whole career. It was their whole family's livelihood. And when we
Hmm.
lost those film incentives, now they've been like, some of them have had to move to Georgia. Some of them have just chosen new careers. Some are still struggling to like get projects here and there. Some that work in commercials are still doing okay, but the work is not anything like it was before. As you know, like it was a really sad thing to happen to the industry there.
Yeah, it's amazing that when they were shooting Iron Man 3, we're located right down here by the state port. And of course, at the end of Iron Man 3, they do that big scene around the ports and the ships. And literally, they shot that, you know, 300, 400 yards from our TV station. So to watch that kind of stuff happen was really kind of cool as it was happening. But there hasn't been nearly as much of that since.
Yeah, definitely. And now Atlanta has, I don't know, I don't want to say all the Marvel film stuff, but a lot of it, because they shoot down at a studio here called Pinewood Studios.
Hmm.
And they shoot all the Marvel movies I know of. They shoot there now.
So what was it like for you when you then got into it? You said you did some crew work, but what was the first, I guess, step toward where you are now? You work on the costume department after being in season one of Powers. So what was life like as you started to get started?
It's just, I mean, kind of like any freelancer in our industry, it's up and it's down, and a lot in the Southeast is kind of like people switching from department to department, which is not the way it is in LA and New York. Um, but especially in the lower positions, which I kind of had to stay in. I started being a production assistant, which is like the lowest job you can have.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of different departments. I did the office, I did set, I did costumes. And then I kind of started to eventually, after actually many years of doing that, get into coordinating. I was coordinating commercials for a little while, but then I realized I couldn't coordinate and act. Like if I was being a production assistant, which is an easily fillable job, and I have a group here in Atlanta that lets me leave for acting stuff whenever I'm PAing with them. But I couldn't do that as a coordinator. So I had to like drop back down to being a PA in order to get, to be able to go to auditions and do the jobs and stuff and keep my job.
Was it difficult? Were there some nights you're like, man, I'm going to do this the rest of my life? I can imagine that it is a pretty humbling time in your life when some of that stuff didn't come through as quickly as obviously you wanted it to.
Right. Yeah. For one thing, sometimes, especially when you're working on crew, you're working like 65 hours a week minimum, pretty much. Sometimes 80, sometimes more, within like a Monday through Friday. And with acting, you might have an audition. Like I had an audition that just came in, and it's due in 2 days, and that's pretty much about how much time you usually get. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there'll be a shorter period of time. Sometimes like they'll say we need this tomorrow morning, and if you're working crew and you're dirty and gross and sweaty and you've been like busting your hump all day trying to get something shot, and you get home at midnight and you have to take a shower and do your makeup and hair and put some clothes on, set up your lights and set up your camera and rehearse your lines and find all the objective and whatever you're going to do for the scene and make your choices and shoot the audition, and then you have to upload it and edit it and do all. It's very taxing when you've worked all day long.
Sure.
So it's a lot harder in that respect, but I was also glad that I made it work and that I could juggle having a job that paid my bills and get all my auditions in.
What was the first opportunity you had there once you started full time? Was it Powers or was it? I know you did some of the commercials, but tell me about kind of show by show as you got started.
In crew or acting?
Acting. Because I know crew, you were on Homeland, right? You did the crew for Homeland for a little while?
I did Homeland and Banshee. I did a show called, that was both in Charlotte. And then in Atlanta, I worked on a TBS show called The Detour. Anyway, that was all crew. Acting wise, so hard for me to remember. In 2014, I think it was, 2014, I did a lot of different things. I did an ABC pilot that was in Wilmington. I did A Walk in the Woods with Robert Redford and Nick Nolte, and we took that to Sundance in 2015, which was amazing, so much fun. I did Ant-Man. I did Turn Washington Spies, which is a show on AMC.
So that was really kind of your first year of tasting that on a full-time basis then, 2014?
Well, I was still doing crew while I was doing all that.
Oh, yeah.
The first time that I quit doing crew and started just acting was this year.
This year.
With The Gifted.
I've spoken to a couple of others and asked them what it's like working with some of the legends, but you're in the front seat of a car, and in the back seat of this scene, Nick Nolte and Robert Redford. Now, I know things are shot differently, but that had to have been just one of the neatest times for you as a young actor, with all of the experience with those two. What did you learn? What did you take in, especially with that program?
That stands to be the most fun I've ever had on a set.
Really?
Of any set. It was. We took a while to shoot that scene. Maybe 2 or 3 days, I think, just for the 1 or 2 scenes. It's kind of a long time. Working with Redford and Nolte was great. I had been watching Robert Redford since I was a little kid, and working with him was obviously amazing, but also just because of who he is as a person. He would like come down and say, let's talk. Do you want to have a talk? Do you want to practice our lines? And asking me about what I'd done and what I wanted to do. And also the director on that, Ken Klopis, was such a cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
And because the scene is comedic in nature too, we were having so much fun shooting it. And we were actually in the car. There was a shot where it was just the two guys in the car, and they put a camera in the front seat, and then I was wedged in by the camera so that they'd have somebody to deliver lines to. And then they did the opposite with Lenz and I in the front seat, and then they would do shots with all four of us in a tiny little sports car driving on the road in some of those shots. And it was like, I think it was like July in Atlanta, Georgia, and we were all dressed basically like it was winter, especially Nolte and Redford were wearing like coats.
Yeah.
We were just like dripping sweat, but we had so much fun.
I was going to say, you kind of, I would think, again, that you almost kind of learn from osmosis, just from all that experience and all that talent in the backseat of that vehicle.
Yeah, it's neat to get to work with actors who have been doing it a long time. Sometimes you get in a scene with someone who's new and maybe doesn't quite have a method of doing things. So anytime you get to work with someone who's experienced is good, whether they be Robert Redford or anyone else who just has been doing it for a long time.
Now, there was a piece you were in called Alone, Not Yet Alone. Mm-hmm. And I know you do a lot of work in the studio, but that one seems to have taken place far from a studio, wasn't it? Wasn't that out in the woods and really a lot different than studio work, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was in Tennessee, actually. I don't remember where in Tennessee, but gosh, that was a long time ago. I'm trying to think of what year that might have been 2009 or 2010. That was when I was really just first getting started.
But that, I mean, aside of, doing the stuff in a studio, which you're doing, being out there in the elements and stuff like that had to have been just a completely different kind of experience for you.
Yeah, with any project, part of it may be in the studio and part of it on location.
Right.
That one was definitely like way out in the woods.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what town it was near.
Yeah. But just set in that kind of atmosphere. I mean, the elements and everything else like that. It just dawned on me to be just so different from, studio work. I just wanted to at least ask you about that because that had to have been a challenge in its own right.
Sure, yeah. Well, anytime we're in like extreme heat or extreme cold, which is pretty often when we're on location, it's not, you get like the 2 great weeks of fall in this area in the Southeast. So anytime it's like really hot or really cold, it's hard for all of us, but especially for the crew. Like as actors, we'll get a heater and we get breaks, whereas the crew, like they still have to just like be working 24/7 while we're out there in those elements. So
being on the crew, did that give you a different appreciation then for it, for
Absolutely.
what they did?
Yeah, I don't complain about the elements so much when I'm an actor.
Yeah, when you have that experience, it's kind of interesting.
When you would say, like, really?
Yeah, when you start running teleprompter to TV station, and all of a sudden you start reporting, then you really kind of give a thank you to the teleprompter guy after every newscast. Believe me, to tell you the truth. Getting into the Marvel universe with Ant-Man and then with Gifted. It's very secretive. I've seen a couple of different interviews that you've done where people have asked you about things and you're like, I can't tell you. That's got to be difficult in the reason where you want to tell your family and friends and everybody, hey, I'm working on this, but you can't say anything, can you?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely really hard, but it gets easier with the mindset that you just think like, I know all the secrets, then it's kind of cool to like not tell anybody. But there's a lot like that. The show is a little bit more lenient. Our producers like us to post a lot. We just have to get it approved through them, whatever we're posting first.
Mm-hmm.
But that's Marvel Entertainment, whereas Marvel Studios that does the films are like locked down about everything, like every little thing, even some things that we would be shooting. I would say I'm going to get a picture of this. I won't post it until the film comes out. And they'll say, no, you can't ever post that.
Mm-hmm.
No one can ever see that. Like, it's like behind the scenes stuff, you know, they never ever want anyone to see it. So some things, like, even once the film comes out, you can't
Yeah,
divulge.
that's got to be a little restraining and constraining to you at times. Did you do any special research for Janet Van Dyne when you landed that role? I mean, you know,
Absolutely not, because I had no idea who I was playing until the day that I got there to shoot.
oh, really?
So I was like, I was completely surprised. Whenever you start a project, you do your contract like the day that you start filming.
Oh, really?
Even if you have fittings or whatever beforehand, you don't see your contract till the day you come in to shoot. And because they're so secretive, I think they told me in the audition it was like Scientist's Wife was the name of the audition, and they don't tell you the name of the film. So I didn't know. I had known because of my connections with crew, kind of what was shooting and guessing what it was probably.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got to set and saw that it was Janet Van Dyne. And to be honest, I didn't really read comics growing up, so I didn't know who that was.
Right. No, and most people wouldn't.
Googling it, and then once I Googled it and saw it was like the Wasp,
Yeah.
I was like, and now I got to go to set and figure out what does this mean.
Were you in any way, shape, or form disappointed in what ended up being on the big screen? Because again, doing some reading, I understand you had some lines with Michael Douglas, which is another one of those legends that I would think you would learn from. But I mean, you get this great part, you're in a top-selling movie. Can you be personally maybe a little disappointed that none of those lines got in there, or were you just happy to be a part of the product?
No, I was pretty disappointed. But that's kind of like the name of the game. Like anytime, obviously when it's a bigger project like that and you're playing the Wasp and you have this great scene with Michael Douglas and then you get to the theater and you see it and then you're like, where are the lines? I have lines. But you have to like just, sit there and act like it's not affecting you because you're in a theater full of people.
All right.
It was pretty disappointing and I wish I had known beforehand. But anytime you do like a show or movie, like there's things that are going to be edited out
Mm-hmm.
and you have to just take it as it comes, whether that's you or not. It might be a technical issue. It might be for time. It might be for plot. Like maybe this character doesn't really matter too much in the film, so they take it out, which I had that happen on a show recently. And sometimes you just have a feeling about it. When you're reading the script and you're like, this scene doesn't seem to really matter that much, so if they need to take a minute out, this is going to be where it happens.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew, and then I watched the show to see, and I wasn't in it, so.
I learned that when Matlock was filming. I don't want to get off on this, but Matlock was shot here in Wilmington for years. And after I got here, they needed somebody to do a news announcer on one of the broadcasts. So they brought me in, and I read for it on a Saturday morning or something. So I went and I did it. And of course, Mom and Dad were huge Andy Griffith fans, as most in that generation were. So I told my mom and dad, I said, Matlock next week, I'm going to be on, and here's what I'm going to be doing. And it turned out I was nowhere to be found. And so it was one of those deals where, oh, I know exactly what you're going through.
Especially whenever you have like the one thing, like if you're just starting out and it happens, or you just have like this one, you're not doing it all the time, and you like there have been scenes that I had on The Gifted that were cut out, and it's not a big deal because I'm in the show a lot, and like whatever. But whenever you just have the one scene, or it's the first thing you've ever done and then it gets cut out, I'm just more disappointing.
Yeah, and I was actually doing what I do for a living, so I mean, and
it
Mom.
was because of you. I promise it was not because of you.
Okay, well, I feel better now. Anyway, thanks.
Personally, they think, oh, did I do something wrong? But it's not. Most of the time, it's not. You wouldn't have been hired if you couldn't have done what you needed.
I was like, I'm a real news anchor. I tell you, I did everything you asked me to do. What was going on here? When you're in the Marvel universe, though, with the Wasp, when you're in there, do you think that there's always the possibility that you may be brought back again, or is that pretty much behind you now?
There's always that possibility, yeah. Marvel's pretty loyal to its people, but they surely won't ever tell you ahead of time, not at this level.
Right.
If you're, Robert Downey Jr., they'll probably have a discussion with you about coming back for something else. But
Tell me about The Gifted. How did you land that role, and what's it been like for you? Because it seems like it really has taken your career to the next level.
uh, it has been kind of a whirlwind, and it's been amazing. And I've been included in so much stuff that I never thought I would have been included in. When I first read for the show, so I was working in the office on a film, and I was initially working for the woman who lets me leave for stuff, but then she left to do another project. The new guy that I was working under, he came in, and I was like the minute he came in, I'm like, so I have an audition I need to go to next week. And he's like, no.
Uh-oh.
So I got fired. But the thing was, like, really, I haven't ever told anyone this publicly, but I didn't actually have to go to the audition. It was a taped audition, but I hadn't seen that casting director in like a year or two. I hadn't seen him in forever. And like, you always want to get up in front of somebody when you can. The energy is different. You get to like see the people when you don't normally get to see them. It's just a really good opportunity. So I lost that job, went into this audition, and the audition went great. And then I got home, and either that night or the next morning, I got an email from my agent that said, hey, we just got some direction on what they want this character to do, so we need you to retape it. So that audition got trashed anyway, and I had to retape it at home. But then I didn't even have a callback. They booked me from the tape, and there was some stuff that went on about who the character was going to be, and then they ended up having me as Sage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so cool. Like, first of all, I had no idea I was going to be on the show that much. I've been in 12 of the 13 episodes of the season. Tonight is episode 12 and 13.
Yeah.
And I would have been in all 13, but I was doing something else. I was doing a film during episode 10, so I couldn't be in that episode. I just had no idea I was going to be, when they hire you, they say, this could possibly recur, but you don't know if it will for sure or not.
Right.
And then it's kind of good that I didn't have a job to like continually ask off for, because I would have had to leave that job anyway, I guess.
Now, you said you were been involved. It has opened things and allowed you to do things that you never would have. Like what? What kind of things?
Yeah. So, well, like, as a local Atlanta actor, anyone in the Southeast who's based in the Southeast, there are 3 different types of casting. You have main casting, which is out of LA and New York. Then you have local casting, which is like Atlanta local casting. And then you have extras casting, which is how they cast the background. So if you're like an Atlanta actor, you're cast from local casting. And our level of actor that's not like cast out of LA doesn't get included in main cast type of activities. And in this show, like, I got invited to so many things from the producers where we were like live tweeting on the show with the main cast. And I was really just, I wasn't, the LA casting main cast, but I was still a part of the principal cast. And there were a couple of us who were included in that. And I was just really, really grateful to be. It kind of like gave me a huge lesson in social media. I was like totally posting just anything and everything. Like, I would post multiple times a day on Instagram. Like, here's a bug I saw on the sidewalk, and here's a meme I thought was funny, and like this terrible picture of myself, but it's a funny picture. And I learned, like, don't post so much worthless crap on your Instagram because if your Instagram just becomes like nobody wants to look at it.
Yeah.
And also Twitter, which I had done in college for my PR classes, but I hadn't really been on Twitter since. And realizing like what a force it is to be able to interact with the fans of the show through the social media and stuff like that.
I was going to say that it seems to me like fans, and especially Marvel and comic book fans, and they're relating to you on a couple of different levels, I would think, are very active on social media. So they want to reach out to you guys all the time, it would seem.
Yeah. It's been pretty cool too. Like, during the show, a lot of us live tweet, which like we'll watch the show and we'll just be on Twitter, and if people ask us things and hashtag the gifted, or if they add our Twitter handles, then we can see it and we can reply back to them, and people will ask us questions about the show or whatever, and it's really cool because like a lot of it is going on, so much more than I would have ever thought that people get on there to tweet during the shows.
What can we expect from the finale tonight when we sit back and watch?
I'm so excited. I don't know what I can tell you to expect, because I don't want to spoil anything. Even like one of my best friends, I was in LA this last week and I was having dinner with him, and he's a huge fan of the show. He's always been a big X-Men fan. He goes as Wolverine for Halloween like every year. He's like loves the X-Men. And we were talking about the show and I wanted to tell him so bad, but I was like, I don't want to spoil it for you, but something really big happens. Of course, it's the season finale.
Sure.
You know, a number of big things happen, but I'm really excited to see. We just got picked up for season 2, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see kind of like what our cliffhanger leads into for season 2.
Getting renewed for a second season, I can imagine everybody was just, getting that news had to be a huge day around the set.
Well, we'd already wrapped once we got picked up. I got a text from Emma, who plays Polaris, and she just said like, just picked up for season 2, and I was so glad she texted me because I immediately texted my mother, and like 5 minutes later, Twitter blew up about it. And if I hadn't have told my mom before Twitter came out with it, she would have been pretty upset.
You'd have been in trouble. Yeah, you would have been in trouble, big time trouble.
She was like, "Have you been picked up yet? Have you been picked up yet?"
What are some of your memories of Wilmington? I know you said you the beach and everything else like that, but what are some of your best times in this town?
I don't think I really had very many bad times in that town. Wilmington was such a great city to live in. Just the atmosphere downtown at the river, the beach. It was just like really like close community feel there. And I don't know if part of that was just that I went to college there. But I loved living there. Like anytime you had a down day, like there was always something to do, somewhere pretty to go sit, and I miss that.
Yeah, you don't have that kind of stuff in Atlanta, that's for sure. What is on your horizon? I know you said earlier that you're working, you had season 10 and you were working on a film, and I know that's, with Marvel and The Gifted, you have to be secretive, but what can you tell us? What's next on where we're going to see you after the season wraps here?
I have a film I'm not sure if it's coming out this year or not. Everything is really, God, everything I've done has been super NDA. Like I have a film that comes out this summer. I'm not allowed to say a word about it. And then I have another film that's coming out, I think this year. But I'm not allowed to say the name of it. It's a horror film.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're busy, we think, at this point in time, right?
Exactly. I've got some auditions to do today. That's what I'm doing after this. Gonna go shoot some auditions in the other room, and
safe to say The Gifted has really opened doors for you that taken you different places?
It has definitely a lot in just kind of like the level that I am considered on, because as an actor, you can be the greatest actor in the world, but if you're not having enough screen time to display it on a reel, to show casting and to show directors what you can do, or that you can be professional and that you know how to be on set, that's one of the biggest things as an actor. Like, I have a friend who is just starting out and he's been taking classes, and we did kind of like a mock audition the other day, and as soon as he got in front of the camera, like everything changed. It was not the same as when he was in class. and beyond the audition, like going on the set, like there's just a lot of like comfort that you have to build through your experience. And until you have enough screen time to kind of show that, you're just not, there are steps, different levels to be considered at. And so The Gifted has been great to kind of put me in a place where I can at least show more footage consistently on a consistent basis of the show and the episodes and the actors I'm working with.
Now, you've obviously been doing this, I can imagine it feels like a long time, but your career is still in the early stages. To those young ladies and young guys who were like you in high school, or were performing like you did for your family and relatives when you were in middle school or whatever, and then thought about it in college, to all of those who have a thought about wanting to do what you do for a living, what advice would you tell them? What would you, sitting back now as a veteran actress, what would you tell them?
I would say get started as early as possible and take classes, study, find experienced teachers who, not just Joe Schmo actor who's put a sign up above his door that says he'll teach you something, but like just real good teachers that know how to teach acting, and that comes from just kind of like taking different classes and seeing where you get the most out of. Starting young is helpful because you have more time to gain that experience on set or on auditions, with classes with other actors. And then as you age, you gain kind of, more life experience that helps too. But bills, man, you got to start when you're young and you have less bills.
And there were a lot of people who helped you along the way?
Yeah, definitely. You have to have a good support system in this industry. You have to have good teachers and coaches and other actor friends that will come and help you with an audition at 1:00 in the morning or whatever,
Yeah.
Because you have to have, that's the other thing, when you're doing an audition, you have to have a reader doing the other lines behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that can be really difficult when you've got a 1 hour time frame in the middle of the night to shoot your audition or whatever.
Yeah. Well, Hayley, I appreciate you taking all the time. I know you're very busy. And we're going to be watching the season finale tonight of The Gifted, and look for you on season 2, and look for the movies that you're in this year that you can't tell us anything about.
I'll tweet you about it when I can tell.
Okay. Again, we appreciate you taking the time. The best of luck, and so glad that you're Wilmington's star on The Gifted, and we're going to keep an eye on your career as you go forward.
Will do. Thanks, John.
Big thanks to Hayley Lovitt for joining us this week, and we'll all look forward to season 2 of The Gifted. You can keep up with Hayley on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and she has her own website, HayleyLovitt.com. In our next episode, it's Basketball Hall of Famer Ann Donovan. Now, Ann won championships as a player and as a coach, but she also has 3 gold medals as a player and a coach representing the United States in the Olympics.
It is so hard to put it into words, but I don't think, there's any Olympic athlete for any country that doesn't feel a significant internal gauge that's kind of off the charts about what the meaning of that competition or that particular game, or even before you get to the medal round, just what it means to put on red, white, and blue and represent your country. For me, it was the ultimate, by far surpassed anything else I was able to do.
Ann Donovan talks more about being in the Olympics as a player and a coach, and her basketball history, coming up on our next one-on-one podcast. If you know someone who you think would be a good interview for an upcoming episode, send me an email, please, jevans@wect.com, and let me know who it is. And if you leave me a rating or a review after this podcast, well, you could be the lucky winner of a WECT travel mug. Here's what you do. Send me a screenshot of your rating or review, again, to jevans@wect.com. We'll pick one lucky reviewer at random and send you that WECT mug. I'm John Evans. Thanks for being with us for this episode of One on One.